Hi there, it's Dr. Sarah Larsen. We're going into Lesson 18 of A Course in Miracles. I'm so grateful that you're here with us, and here to help us with this lesson are Greg Roach and Greg Larsen. The three of us are covering I am not alone in the experiencing the effects of my seeing. I am not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. And so, Greg Roach, I'd love for you to share sort around the idea for today is another step in learning that the thoughts which give rise to what you see are never neutral or unimportant. It is also emphasizing the ideas that minds are joined, which will be given increasing stress later on. So that idea that minds are joined, which will be given increasing stress later on.
Well, you know, it's interesting because on the one hand, you want to think, this is comforting. I'm not alone in my delusion, you know, or I'm not alone in the fact that I'm creating and projecting all of these thoughts out onto the world. But this also carries with it a lot of responsibility. And, you know, it's fascinating to me, if you're familiar with the science of mind, this is one of the core tenets of science of mind, you know, the idea that there is really a single mind that joins us all together. That, however, cuts both ways. You know, it implies a level of personal responsibility, and it also there's a cautionary tale there, you know. And one of the things from Science of Mind that I always loved was, be careful with that thought, you don't know where it's been. And, you know, part of that is because we pull things out of the collective, and, you know, something will masquerade as an original thought or as a genuine thought or as a personal thought. But in fact, it's not. It's something that has been plucked from the collective that you think you're thinking, you know, authentically, originally, but it's something that's shared. And so that's one of the things that I always ask myself, you know, when something, you know, comes to me. It's like, wait a minute, where did I get that? You know, was that truly self-generated, or is that something that I've pulled down out of the collective? And so, yeah, it's fascinating to me the corollaries between A Course in Miracles, which was you know, channeled and generated independently, and the tenets from the New Thought movement, you know, and the fact that they are in perfect agreement, to me, is you know, an indication of the fact that they're really pointing at a profound truth.
That's so beautiful, and so I love this lesson, and I love that question that you make reference to is where is this thought coming from? Is this my thought? And so, Greg Larsen, if you can pick up from there.
Yes, and I totally agree that there is this collective that is also, you know, we're tuned into and tapped into. So you have to be mindful of, is that thought true? Because the same thing, you know, is you know, I might be feeling down or a little somber, and it's like, wow, there's nothing going on in my life that should make me feel this way. Why am I feeling down? And so you might, you know, if you're aware of something of this, you might tune into the fact that, wow, maybe today there's a lot of somber thoughts because of something in the news that happened that I haven't heard yet. And so there's a lot of collective thinking about a certain situation that might be creating a lot of somber thoughts. And now I'm, you know, through this collective mind tuning into that. So that's one reason why we have to be very, you know, mindful of you know, the source of what those thoughts might be. And then another, you know, to you, what I would say very practical thing is, because that's, I think, on a deeper level, another one is, you know, as I'm sitting at home working and my kids are downstairs playing and I'm having, you know, peaceful thoughts and creative thoughts, and all of a sudden I hear one of my kids, you know, scream out or something happened and there is a little tussle, all of a sudden my thoughts become, oh no, you know, and I, you know, scoot downstairs and I try and, you know, listen what's going on, and all of a sudden my thoughts that were just peaceful a moment before are now not peaceful thoughts, and I'm getting frustrated because there's frustrated kids, and so there's this whole world that's being created because my thoughts are with theirs, and I'm so connected with them energetically, psychically, that I'm not alone in this world. I'm definitely integrated with them in a way that my thoughts are, that I'm not alone in experiencing, or I'm not alone experiencing the effects of my seeing, because all of that's contributing to my experience also.
Thank you so much. It brings me to this story. My girlfriend and I were going home from LSU to New Orleans, and I was dropping her off to her family, and I was going to my family's. And we had all of our things in the car, but it took us so long to pack up all of our stuff that we didn't get done until like 3 o'clock in the morning. And she didn't have a key to her parents' home. And so she didn't want to arrive at home at like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, Baton Rouge to New Orleans, and she lived on the west bank of New Orleans. So we decided that we were going to sit down and watch Lake Pontchartrain, and we were going to just enjoy the sunrise on Lake Pontchartrain. And she and I had spent all day, maybe even more than a day, maybe like we were going on 28, 30 hours of being awake, packing up our rooms for getting home for the holidays. And she and I watched the lake, and we convinced ourselves that we saw a submarine coming through the water, and we were not on any mind-altering substances like kids in college can be. We were like as sober and as serious as possible, and we had this illusory, like, connected vision that we both saw and convinced ourselves of. And this lesson just really brought me back to that moment, which was so profound. It's an emphasis on an aspect of your perception. And Greg Roach, in one of the lessons, he said, our thoughts are like bullets. And a bullet is a tool. A bullet doesn't necessarily on its own do any harm, but when you're sending these thoughts out, words out, when you're transmitting these thoughts, they can hurt like a bullet, or they can be protective if someone is harmful in your way, a bear coming at you. And I thought of when we're in situations and I am not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. Very much the news that we see on television these days is a hyper, very large sense of this. I am not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. There's a camera person going out and sharing what is being seen, and then it comes back and that information is interpreted. We used to have laws in this country that made it very specific that if you showed a pro side to a story, you had to also show the con side, the positive and the negatives. We no longer have those laws that, or the objective reporter that we once did. I think in the 60s and 70s, our reporters were revered like gods because they were expressing the ability to see multiple aspects on a much deeper level. And this really brought this lesson home, is when I am counseling someone, when I'm talking with someone, or when there is an energy of us being afraid of something, we can walk down a dark path like my girlfriend and I did, seeing this submarine in Lake Pontchartrain and having the idea that New Orleans was being invaded by some malicious force through submarines in Lake Pontchartrain. And of course the sun came up and we fell asleep watching the sunrise, and when we woke up we realized that we had created that illusion by looking at pointers in the water that made us think that. And so much of our news really creates this massive fear that emphasizes fear-based things. And so it's really interesting what can happen. And I'd love your thoughts on that, Greg Larsen.
Yeah, well, that, you know, tuning into the news, which is everywhere, coming at us through the radio, through TV, through our cell phones, through our iPads, through our computers, through our, you know, billboards, wherever we're going, it's just pounding away its message. And that message is a lot of fear-based thinking. So you're certainly not alone in this world when you have all those powerful streams of messages, of thoughts and images that are flooding your experience. So again, just going back to, you got to be extremely mindful of what type of reality those thoughts and images are creating in your experience. Especially when it's taking experiences from around the world, which a few hundred years ago we would have been on our farm in Minnesota, and you know, the news would have traveled very slowly, so we would have had a much more serene experience. It might have been, you know, the gossip from around town, but we wouldn't have been tuned in every day to images of bombs coming down and destruction and terrorist forces and all of these things that are just flooding our collective thinking nowadays, because these few sources decide to amplify that. So again, just being super mindful is you know, what needs to be happening nowadays.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And Greg Roach, if you'll help us wrap this lesson.
Well, yeah, you know, I think for me this is a reminder of the shared nature of humanity, the shared nature of our experience, and this is, you know, cutting to that truth in a really, really profound way. And to your point about the nature of our media, so much of it is based on that divisive view of the world and the kind of us and them, you know, positioning. But, you know, in a way, if you think about it, it's almost like watching children. If we're all equally deluded, that's part of what this lesson is pointing out to us. And, you know, it's like watching children play. I mean, you see children, you know, get into something, and from an adult's perspective, it's like, oh, that's so sweet, but you guys need to take a breath and step back and, you know, give the toys back. And so, you know, in a way, that's the analogy that comes to mind. It's if we can acknowledge how equally deluded every single person on the planet is at this fundamental level about, you know, what the true nature of our perception is, the true nature of reality. It reconstitutes our experience of the world in a pretty radical way.
Oh, that's so lovely. And so I love wrapping this lesson up. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. And I really want to just add a point, which is part of what happens when we do take shamanistic journeys, and when we do take, and when people that, like, there is a neurologist that experienced heaven and came back and shared the experience. Those shaman-based medicine often talks about being able to see the illusion of how we perceive ourselves separate. And there was a neurologist that had a stroke in her one half of her brain, and the other half was able to perceive her oneness with everything. And I think this lesson also points to that we are not separate. And the non-physical world is one of the easiest places that we can experience that. And the non-physical world is made up of energy, and that energy is vortices. And those vortices really have the ability to create the same effect in each of us. And we're not in this alone. So I want to thank everybody watching, because we're here to tell you you are not alone in seeing the experiences of what you're seeing. And we will see you in the next lesson. Thank you so much.